Okay, so yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So today we'll take up the discussion on forced vibrations. But before that, we'll just do a quick recap of what are natural vibrations and damped vibrations. Natural vibrations are the frequency at which an object, when an object vibrates and it produces a sound without there being any other external forces being applied on it. And when we say external forces, we don't talk about the initial force that is required to get something to start vibrating. But once it has started vibrating, then if there are no other forces being applied, then the way it vibrates, that produces a natural vibration. Now, in reality, that does not happen, because what natural vibrations mean is that the object's amplitude does not reduce in time, okay, because there are no external forces acting on it. In reality, all objects that vibrate has a damping force that is inherent to the situation. Even if it is nothing, it can be also because of air drag. If air drag is also removed through a vacuum, the fact that these objects are connected in some way to something else, that produces its own damping effect, and therefore the amplitude reduces over the time. Now we come to the question of forced vibrations. Okay, so how are forced vibrations different from damped vibrations? That is the question. We have to distinguish between these two things. So I have over here a set of tuning forks. This is not the best set that I use for these purposes, so are you able to? No, you can't. There is no frequency that is, there is a frequency stamp on this. You can't see it. So this happens to be D, 288 Hertz. Okay, the note is called D, and the vibration, the frequency of this particular tuning fork is 288 or nearly 288. We can never be sure. Okay, so because there is some rust on it, and it's made in Ludhiana or Jalandhar or whatever, so therefore it has some. I don't mean to say this literally made over there, but it's manufactured by the crate and the barrel. So you've got, we in our lab itself, we have got about a dozen of these, a dozen sets, that is. So when this is struck, I don't have anything to strike it against, so I'm just going to strike it against the whiteboard. Are you able to pick up the vibration? Are you able to hear it? Just tell me if you can.
Just slightly in the beginning.
In the beginning, okay. Let me try again. Are you able to?
Yeah, that was better.
Yeah.
I kept it closer to the mic. So now the thing is that you are not able to hear the vibration a lot, because the amount of energy that a tuning fork can put into, in terms of the kinetic energy of the particles, is fairly small, obviously. Okay, so you won't hear it very clearly. But what I can do is I can do this. Could you hear it better now?
Right.
I don't know if this is possible to make out what I'm doing. What am I doing?
So take the camera near the board, sir. Then we'll hear it better.
Near the board. Okay, I can do it like this. I have another board with me. So what I'll do is, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Forced vibrations.
Yeah, forced vibration is happening, but what do you mean by that? Can we define forced vibration based on what you saw? Or heard?
So basically,
Yeah. Go ahead, somebody.
yeah, so the tuning fork,
Yeah.
so the tuning fork, which is oscillating at a certain frequency, is
Yeah.
put on the board, which causes the board to also oscillate. Therefore, the board also starts producing a sound.
Exactly. So now the thing is that, does this board have 288 Hertz as its natural frequency? I'm striking it. Do you think that is 288 Hertz? This is 288 Hertz. This is not. Okay. So now the question is, which one is being forced to vibrate? Which of the object is forced to vibrate? The tuning fork or the board?
The board.
The board, exactly. So the point is that when you place a tuning fork in contact with the board, okay, and the tuning fork is vibrating, what ends up happening is the board also ends up vibrating at the same frequency. So this is what we call as forced vibrations. Something which does not have the natural frequency of the tuning fork, which is 288 Hertz, is also being forced to vibrate at 288 Hertz. Okay, and why does that happen? Well, that happens because this object is vibrating. It's actually mechanically making that object also vibrate to the same frequency. And now, because the surface area of this board is much larger, right? The amount of kinetic energy that it gives to the air particles, which is our particles of the medium, is greater. So therefore, the volume is greater. Are you understanding this? So therefore, you are able to hear it. In fact, if you are physically present in the classroom, I can do it on the blackboard, and then the effect is much more pronounced. I'll do it with another tuning fork. I think a tuning fork with higher frequency. So I have C, 512 Hertz. This is C, 512 Hertz. I'll see if I can make that happen with this. Or is the D note better, 288 Hertz better?
This one is better.
He is better.
C is better, okay. So I'm using C. This is 512. And now I can make the board vibrate at that frequency. 288. Sorry, 512. This is 288. Okay. So basically, that is what forced vibrations are all about. Okay, so now let's look at what is said in the textbook. We'll go to the textbook interpretation part of it. This is page 158. Okay, and the section starts off by saying the vibrations of a body which take place under the influence of an external periodic force acting on it is called as forced vibration. Okay, so in this case, the external force is produced by the tuning fork and the whiteboard is being made to vibrate at the same frequency. So therefore, the whiteboard is now under forced vibrations. So then the given example, the terminology you have to pay attention to. The external force is called as the driving force. The correct term that they are giving is driving force for this. And that driving force makes an object of a different natural frequency to vibrate in the same frequency as that of the driving force. Okay. Then they come to, there is a note written over there. Let's just examine that note. The amplitude of forced vibrations of a body does not remain constant due to the presence of damping forces of the surrounding medium. However, it is possible to keep the amplitude of vibrations constant by applying an external periodic force such that the external periodic force compensates for the loss of energy in each vibration due to the damping forces. The vibrations of the body are then called sympathetic vibrations. Okay, so basically what happens is when you apply a driving force, the whiteboard or the object which you are forcing to vibrate now vibrates with what is known as sympathetic vibrations. Okay, so under a driving force causes sympathetic vibrations. And then the textbook goes on to give some examples of forced vibrations. When the stem, the first one is the example that we tried out just now. When the stem of a vibrating tuning fork is pressed against the top of a table, the tuning fork produces forced vibrations on the tabletop. The tabletop has a much larger vibrating area, and so the forced vibrations of the tabletop send forth a greater energy and produces a louder or more intense sound than produced by the tuning fork itself. So in terms of the tuning fork, so these are the tines of the tuning fork, and this is called the stem, the part that you hold. So when I was creating the forced vibration, I placed the stem of it on the whiteboard. So that's the first example. The second example is the vibrations produced in the diaphragm of a microphone sound box with frequencies corresponding to the speech of the speaker are forced vibrations. So in terms of the working of a microphone or a speaker, there is somebody who is talking, okay, which means they are producing some sounds, and there is a microphone that is picking up these sounds. Okay, a microphone doesn't look like that, but I'm just drawing it like this. Now this microphone has got a movable diaphragm. Okay, a diaphragm is basically something like a material which has been stretched. Okay, and what happens is when the sound waves hit the diaphragm moves back and forth. It also starts vibrating at the same frequency as the speaker is speaking. Then that vibration, the sympathetic vibrations of the diaphragm, then produces electrical signals, which is then carried away by a wire, and then you amplify it and whatnot. Okay. Exactly the same thing happens on the other end if you have a speaker. Okay, and the electrical signals are converted in the speaker back to sound waves. Okay, so that is why it is important to understand this concept of forced vibrations, driving force and sympathetic vibrations, because that is what makes sound transmission across distances using electricity possible. Okay, so the microphone and the speaker are both examples of objects that undergo forced vibrations. Is this clear? So two examples I have explained in detail. Now let's just quickly look at the further examples. In a guitar, when an artist plays on the string with his fingers, the vibrations of the string, that is, causes forced vibrations in the air enclosed in the hollow box. So if you look at most stringed instruments, like say for example the guitar or the sitar, which is the most familiar example for you all, then there is a sound box, right? This part of the guitar. So I'm not going to draw the other parts in detail, but there is a hole over here, and the guitar surface kind of comes out like this, right? So what happens is that the string over here, which is the one that is vibrating, right, that produces vibrations that makes the surface of the box to vibrate. And what happens inside that is the air that is trapped inside it also starts vibrating with the sympathetic vibrations. Okay, and that vibration is what produces a larger sound. So if you just stretch a string and play only the string, and then you try it on the guitar, you can obviously see that the sound that is produced because of the hollow box being present is great. And this is the same for the violin, the sitar, any other stringed instruments that you might be using. It needs a larger surface to vibrate in sympathetic vibrations in order to amplify the sound. Any questions or doubts about this? Any observations that you would like to make based on what we have seen? Yeah, go ahead. You have a question related to yesterday's class. Okay.
So you said that in dampened vibrations,
Yeah.
some cases are there where the frequency cannot change, right?
In damped vibrations.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't apply any external force on it after it has started vibrating, then yes. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, fine. But then what about frictional forces? Won't they decrease the velocity and therefore either the frequency or wavelength?
No, see, the frictional forces will reduce the amplitude. Why would they change the frequency itself?
Because the velocity will be decreased, right? The velocity will decrease.
No, that's the whole point, right? The velocity of propagation of the wave is
Oh,
some
the displacement
sound.
change. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, I get it.
yeah, okay. So that because that the velocity of propagation depends upon the medium, the temperature of the medium, the material of the medium, the closeness with which the atoms and molecules are packed in that medium. So it's got nothing much to do with the object itself that is vibrating. So therefore, the velocity will remain the same. So
So the
that
displace. Okay.
yeah.
So the
Except,
displacement
except
change.
one case that I can think of, and this is, I think that's called, there's something of a domino effect. So what happens is, if there is a train that is approaching you when you're standing on the station, right? And the train's horn is sounded as the train is passing through the station, and you just happen to be standing on the platform. So when the train is coming closer and closer to you, you will notice the frequency of the horn itself changing. That's an entirely different phenomena, where the
Doppler effect, right?
because the object which is producing the sound itself is approaching you. So therefore, the velocity of the propagation of the wave changes. That causes a change in the frequency. So if an object is approaching you, you will find that the pitch increases, and the object is going away from you, you will find the pitch decreasing. Another case may be, sort of an unfortunate situation that we might not want to see, is that if you are in a high-rise building and somebody jumps from the top of the building, and they are screaming as they are falling. So what will you hear? Anyway, we don't need to go into that right now because that's not relevant to what we are doing right now. We'll talk about that later.
That's Doppler effect, right?
That's a Doppler effect, correct. I forgot the correct term. That's a Doppler effect. Yes, yes. Okay, so coming back to the textbook, there is a column, a table, which has been given at the bottom of page 158, second column, that differentiates between what is natural and free vibration and what is forced vibration. So there are 4 differences that are given. I'd suggest that you have a good look at that and remember at least 2. That because that could be a kind of question that is asked. Give 2 differences between forced vibrations and natural vibrations. Then you can give that as the example. So then we come to an example, a special situation of forced vibration, which is called resonance. But before we go to that, I'd just like to be clear if you are all able to understand what is forced vibrations vis-a-vis natural and free vibrations. So Saumitri's question in the chat reads, the duration of amplified sound will be lesser, like the tuning fork oscillates for an X amount of time, and the tuning fork on the board oscillates for an amount of time lesser than that. Yes, it has to, right? Because some of the energy of the vibration is actually going into making the board vibrate. So yes, there has to be a connection between the amount of time that the board vibrates, because the tuning fork's energy is now being distributed across the tines vibrating as well as the board vibrating. Yes, there will be a difference. But what I have seen is that when you actually try to measure the amount of time that the tuning fork will independently vibrate, and if you put it on a board, even a blackboard, the large blackboard which we have in classrooms, it's not absolutely clear when you measure the time whether it is because of the audibility that it takes less time in experimental situation, or is it because of the energy distribution. I have not been able to convincingly do this for myself. But yes, the fact of the matter is, if you look at it in terms of energy being spent, it has to be as you are suggested. And then Patanjali is saying, so that's how the speaker works. There is an extension used in the sitar which makes it louder. It is attached at the top of the sitar, and it's a similar phenomena. I haven't seen this. Top meanings at the top of the stem part, at the top of the base part. Patu, can you just clarify that? On top of the stem. Okay, okay. I haven't seen this part myself though. Normally what we do in terms of musical instruments is you attach a mic to the base of the guitar, let's say, and then when you strike it, the vibrations are picked up and then amplified electrically or electronically rather. So that is how the amplification takes part. It's not a case of direct amplification by making a larger surface area vibrate. So we actually add electricity to it and make the amplitude higher. Okay, so shall we move on to a quick introduction to resonance now? There's about 10 minutes left if I'm not mistaken. And we just take up resonance quickly. So moving on to resonance. So one of the best examples of resonance that can be given is if you have a tuning fork, the textbook gives it in a certain way, but I won't put it like that. Let me just say this is a tuning fork which has a specific frequency, okay, 288 hertz, say for example, and you set it vibrating. All right. Now, in the vicinity of this tuning fork, you have another tuning fork. Okay, of the same frequency. All right. And you start this tuning fork vibrating. A little while later, you will find that this tuning fork also starts vibrating at its natural frequency, but there is no direct contact. This does not touch that directly, but it can make this one also start vibrating. And you can verify that by stopping the vibration on this one, and you will hear this one also vibrating. This also happens in a sitar. You have those, you have the main strings in the sitar, right, which are placed on the actual stem, and then you have these strings on the side. This is a very bad diagram to show that. Okay, let me. So this is the body of the sitar, and then there are these three or four whatever strings you have, and then in the sides there are a few more strings. Okay, and when you strike these strings, you will find that
actually they're at the bottom.
Yeah, they are at the side. Yeah, at the bottom of the side.
No, at the bottom.
You mean at the bottom side of the string of the stem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not like literally under it, but
Yeah.
since the ones over are hovering, just under that there's one more.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Now I remember what you're saying. There is a set of strings right underneath that. Underneath the main strings.
Yep.
Can somebody who plays the guitar, plays the sitar confirm that?
Yeah, they're under the main.
Yeah. So do you pluck those strings also? The strings which are
No. No.
Why are those strings there?
First sector.
Now, can you say in terms of natural vibrations and forced vibrations, what those strings are doing?
They are also enhancing the vibration.
Yeah, they are sympathetic strings which will vibrate in this way. Because the main strings are vibrating, the sympathetic strings also vibrate. So they sustain the sound, they make the sound richer. Okay, but those strings are not strings which you play, which you pluck. Now the question that we have to answer is, how does this happen? Why is it that the second tuning fork starts vibrating when the first tuning fork is vibrated, and although they are not in direct contact with one another? How does that happen?
They have the same natural frequency.
Sorry, Ishan, can you just speak a little louder and clearer?
Do they have the same natural? Yeah, the natural frequency is the same.
Yeah, they have the same natural frequency, but I'll tell you one more thing now. What is double of 288?
576,
5?
76, I think.
Okay, so if I have a tuning fork of frequency 576 hertz also in the vicinity, so naturally it's going to be smaller.
So it doesn't have to be same, it has to be in harmony.
Yes. Okay, so this is the tuning fork with 576 hertz. Okay, you will find that this also starts vibrating. Now please explain to me the mechanics of how does this happen. First you try to explain between these two, and then we will come to this two. If you explain this correctly, then you will also explain this correctly. What's going on?
Is it something to do with the wavelength?
The wavelengths are going to be exactly the same for both, at least theoretically. If this is 288 hertz and this is also 288 hertz, then obviously the frequency is the same, so therefore the wavelengths will also be the same. But I'm saying,
Does it have something to do with, sir? Does it have something to do with constructive interference?
yes, it does. What is constructive?
So basically, when two waves add up, like if they have the same frequency and they're in phase,
But
their amplitude double, right?
so that is constructive interference. Which,
Yeah. And if they're out of phase, exactly, so then they make zero sound.
okay, so in phase, out of phase, constructive interferences. Okay, so let me just go into that quickly. So if you have two waves, and I'm not going to write down the x-axis, y-axis, etc., etc. Okay, if these two waves add up, then you're going to get a wave. Oh God, I can't show it over here. Not enough space. I'll show it over here. Then you are going to get a wave like that. Okay, so basically what happens is that the disturbances that are caused because of the two waves causes, think in terms of the particles of the medium. One wave comes, it moves the particle about its mean position. Another wave comes at exactly the same time and shoves the particle even more. So naturally the movement of the particle is going to get doubled if the amplitudes are the same for these two waves. Okay, so this is wave A, this is wave B. When you add them up, you get a wave C which has double the amplitude. Okay, this is called interference. Okay, but I'll just listen to your question in a moment. I think that's Krishna. So Ishan is saying that it's the constructive interference that is happening over here, but that is true only if there are two waves simultaneously of the same frequency that is happening. But that is not the case over here. I got this one vibrating. This is not vibrating to begin with. So some construction is happening, but it's not a construction of the wave patterns of these two. I'm not talking about increase in amplitude in terms of the combined sound, but obviously the amplitude of this increases. What is happening? Yeah, now you ask.
Wait, did you say that the tuning forks are touching the ground?
They are, but they don't need to. They are, but they don't need to. But you can build it from there also. So Krishna wanted to ask something.
Sonia.
Yeah, that was me.
So I was saying, what if A and B aren't the same waves? Like say A amplitude is 5 and B amplitude is 10. So will the C amplitude be 15, or does it only work with the amplitudes are same?
No, it actually adds up nevertheless. They can also subtract, of course. So instead of B being like this, let's say that it's the reverse. Okay, then what will happen is you will have an interference which is called as destructive interference. It will kill the wave. C will be 0 amplitude. That can also happen.
That is because the amplitudes are same, but the first wave is down and then up. Right?
Theoretically, if they are exact, then that is what will happen.
Okay.
Can you say that the vibration of the first one is influential on the second one because that's the natural vibration of the second one?
Yeah, correct.
So then both of them add up, like you said, for that.
Yeah.
And because these two add up and they become 576, then because of that, even that one starts.
Yeah. So the operating word. So Isha's. I don't know if you could hear Isha's question or suggestion. So she was saying that because they both have the same frequency, can you say that the first one, let's call it A, right? And don't confuse it with this A and B. Okay, maybe I'll give you some other letters. Let's say P and Q. Okay, so since P and Q have the same natural frequency, can you say that P influences Q to start vibrating? Yeah, you can say that. But how exactly? And if that is true, then why does it also work in the case of 576 Hertz? What is the mechanics that is involved over here? And it's something that you can intuitively answer. Okay, so I think I won't explain it today. We don't have the time, and I would like you people to think about it a little bit before we come to the next class. The question remains, why does this happen? This is the phenomena of resonance. Okay, resonance is when there are two objects with the same frequency, same natural frequency, or a whole number multiple. It can also be half of it actually. We'll come to that a little later. Then, without there being any actual physical contact, one can make the others to start vibrating. You have to think in terms of interference patterns. You have to think in terms of influencing one another. But how exactly does this happen? What if maybe another question could be asked is, what if I had another tuning fork over here which has a completely different frequency, which is not a multiple, a whole number multiple of this. Let us say, for example, I have got 512 Hertz. I've got another tuning fork here, which is 512 Hertz. This tuning fork will not vibrate. It won't work. Okay, so when we get to understand this, so the key thing is to explain why this starts vibrating. If you know that, if you are able to give the correct explanation of why this starts vibrating, then it will be automatically clear why this one vibrates and this one does not vibrate. Okay, so think about it, come up with an explanation. We will discuss it in the next class, and then we will understand what is resonance. You are free to use the textbook, other books. Conceptual physics gives a good explanation of this. If you happen to have the copy, or you can borrow it from the Internet Archive, have a look at that and see if you can come up with an explanation by next class. So we will discuss it later in that point. Okay, so we will stop now for today's class. Any other questions or doubt you can ask now?